Josh here, and this is the start of a new series I'm just picking up now. It is the Sookie Stackhouse series, and I intend to do my own series based off it, where I go through the entire book series as well as the television show and review them for you on this channel. Now, I will say this is not going to happen all at once. I am a university student. I have a lot more shit to do, but I can assuredly, I've already knocked off the first few books to get it started, and I have finished the first season, so expect all that coming soon if I haven't already posted it. That said, let's start my review of the first book in the series by Charlaine Harris, Dead Until Dark, which is the basis for Season 1 of True Blood, just for information's sake. Although I will say it follows the story kind of, but yeah, I'll get to that in the True Blood Season 1 review. Now, how is Dead Until Dark? You keep seeing them in the store in the sci-fi fantasy section. You wonder, is it really for me? I don't know. I'm kind of sick of vampires right now. Well, it's a little more difficult question to answer, frankly. I see this series packaged in a huge box set, and anytime you see that, you know the series has attained some mainstream popularity, and definitely so. There's all these movie tie-in covers for it. There's different kinds of box sets. So, I took the plunge, I picked one up, and here's my review. Basically, this series is set in southern Louisiana in the town of Bonton, and centers around Sookie Stackhouse, a telepath waitress who is working in Sam Merlotte's bar. And the main gist of this series, I won't really spoil much of the plot, basically she gets entangled with this vampire named Bill. And the world she lives in, vampires have, quote-unquote, come out of the coffin 2 years ago, which I do find rather amusing. And overall, this series does a lot to really build up its world, so I have to give it credit for that, but at the same time, I thought the actual plot rung a little hollow. While I do like Bill, and Sam as is an alternate love interest, and that's really not a spoiler, it's telegraphed very soon into the novel, I think that it doesn't linger on events quite long enough. These are very short books. They're under 300 pages as far as I've read so far, and Dead Until Dark's only about 250, I think. And I think it could have used just a little more flesh out. I mean, they gave you all the details. You can know that Sookie and Bill's relationship definitely heats up, and you say, oh, I guess they love each other, but you don't really get that feeling that they actually love each other. And I've kind of deduced this from the first couple books, that the series is not really your average love triangle novel series, because it is more about working relationships, and that's kind of what permeates this entire saga, is really a sense of reality in it. Even though there are vampires out and about, they've been legislated into everyday life. All the legal issues, most of the legal issues are taken care of, and while they are not wholly accepted, they are walking among us in society, at least at night. Now, and I think the same thing goes with the relationships. You know, with the world, you feel like it's very down to earth. It focuses on this waitress who's not a rich person, not a really fantastical person outside of her telepathy, but I mean, not really fantastical in the sense that she's super rich or doesn't have to worry about that kind of financial security. And the world is much like that too, where vampires are out and about, but they're just everyday people, most of them, and even the ones that aren't still have to deal with the same issues of race and prejudice that everyone else has to deal with. And I thought the southern setting added real flavor to this novel. At the same time, I think it really bolsters the themes I just mentioned, racial prejudice particularly, and homosexuality plays a large role in this novel. Not in that there's that many homosexual relationships, but there is a clear parallel drawn between homosexuality and vampirism, in that they're both kind of suppressed at the moment. Now, I feel like I'm lathering a bit too much praise on it, because like I said, I don't think this is really the best novel. When I was done it, I thought, that's pretty good, and frankly, I was enough to pick up the rest of the series, or at least a few books now in Season 1 of True Blood. But overall, I gotta say, they're not going to be on my top 10 book list, because I think I like them conceptually more than I like them in practice. Conceptually, it's fantastic. I love the whole domesticated vampire plotline. The southern flavor adds a great feel to the story, particularly Bill's backstory in the Civil War fighting for the Confederates. It was fascinating. And the characters are genuinely amusing. You do like them, and outside of near the end of the novel, I think that they play off really well. And that's another thing I want to get to, by the way, as well. The end of the novel comes out way too fast, and everything happens much at once. And I realize there's a couple plot threads brought up just to really draw you into book two, but the characters didn't quite seem in character around then, and everything was just pushed ahead at a steam. It is like a steamroller, it just keeps going on. But I guess I can't really fault it. It was exciting, and it did make me pick up the next books, but I don't think it's really the best writing. Particularly, a lot of it, there is far too many asides in this book, and Sookie herself, while a likable person and definitely realistic, is kind of a bitch. And I mean that in a relational sense with Bill and Sam. She gets. The book tries to portray her as this kind of southern belle who's pretty, but at the same time can handle herself. And for the most part, it does do this, but she's a little too resilient to the relationships in this series. And like I said, I do appreciate the fact that it is about working relationships rather than a perfect love triangle. That is a neat concept, a neat take on it, even if it is a little unsatisfying. But it just, yeah, I guess that's the best word for it. It's kind of unsatisfying when Sookie will get mad at Bill for doing something that is really just his nature. And while I realize as well this is part of the allegory that even she, who is more accepting than others, has to get over her prejudice, it didn't quite linger. Like I said at the start of the novel, I really thought this book could have been much longer. It's fascinating conceptually, and particularly the second book, which I'll get to in a later review, really plays up a lot of the themes. But overall, you know what? If you're looking for something to read, you could do much worse. It's not so trashy that you will be offended, but it's just trashy enough to be a light, fun, pleasurable read. There is some explicit sex scenes in here, so if you're going to get your kicks that way, they're in there. Otherwise, it's got some pretty good action. It is quite humorous, and overall, it's probably worth a read just because of its sheer length, and that the series, by this I mean True Blood, is very good. And I realize I spoiled my review for that one, but you get to hear the particulars later. Overall, Dead Until Dark's not the best novel, but it's certainly an enjoyable read, and a good start to a series.